We are coming to our Q&A session now, and thank you very much so far to Dr. Henry Wang and to Ambassador Wolfgang Ischinger for this interesting dialogue. And you already raised a lot of many important questions which are striking at the moment. And we already have a first question by Don Gao, and the question goes out to you, Ambassador Ischinger. There are a lot of talks nowadays after the Ukraine war that the US and the EU will impose sanctions on China. And the question is if you think, or if, could it be possible that the US and EU will also put out such sanctions towards China as well, as they thinking about such sanctions towards Russia at the moment? Mentioning the so-called oil embargo.
All right. Well, quite frankly, I have never believed that sanctions are in principle a panacea, an instrument to solve all problems. Sanctions can sometimes be helpful to support certain policy objectives, but sanctions in and of themselves rarely solve the problems. So I think that I'm very skeptical about sanctions between Europe and China. I'm also skeptical about sanctions between the United States and China, because it is obvious if we start slapping sanctions on China, China will have no option but to respond in kind, and I'm not sure that would serve any purpose. I think the real question behind this sanctions discussion is the question: can we be assured, and that again would be a question to the Chinese leadership, can we be assured that China will not do anything that would weaken our attempt to put maximum pressure on Russia to end this war? Can we be assured that China will not come in as an alternative source, either of income or of material, of weapons, equipment, etc.? Can we be assured that China stays out? This is the minimum required, stays out of this terrible, catastrophic situation in the heart of Europe. And if we get minimum assurance in that respect, I think sanctions should not even be on the agenda. I'll stop here.
Thank you very much. We then have a second question going out to you, Dr. Wang, and coming from Benedict Ernst, working at Merck, a pharmaceutical industry. The question is, transferring the experience from Ukraine to possible scenarios for Taiwan, a similar military and economic escalation would be a disaster for world economics, but also for any German investments into mainland China and Taiwan. What can China and Europe do to minimize the risk of such an escalation in Taiwan?
I think that's a question for Henry to respond to. Henry.
Yes, exactly. It goes out to you. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Jennifer and Ambassador Ischinger. And I think this Ukraine war actually has served as a good reminder to everybody. I mean, including the U.S., EU, and China too. I mean, we see that if things resolve into conflict and into the war, it's basically putting the economy and the livelihood of people on hold. And so that anything can be learned from this Ukraine war. That would be really last resort, and something that people trying to avoid. So I think that's why China was really stick on this UN Charter that respects sovereignty, territorial integrity, and no country, even Ukraine, can be an exception. And also, of course, China looks for a comprehensive security arrangement. So that is understand. But I think what has been happening now in this across Taiwan or South China Sea is that we should have a more foreign interference into the region, so that let people, country in the region to solve things by themselves. And also another lesson we learned is that maybe we should not really have too much military alliance, like we have NATO expansion, but also we had AUKUS in this region now, Australia, US, and UK, and we had the Quad, India, US, Australia, Japan. So you have all those. If you don't have those military alliance, that is really not, it's going to bring more attention to this. We should have more like RCEP, like CPTPP, like AIIB, Asian Infrastructure. So maybe that probably would be a good way to build peace in this region. For example, AIIB. India is the largest recipient. India has a vice president in AIIB. So we should do more of this kind of thing, and we should do deeper on the digital agreement with Asia Pacific. So even actually ASEAN had a big meeting in Washington last week. China Foreign Ministry spokesperson said, Asia Pacific is, welcome all the good initiative, all the things that you can benefit the economic and prosperity. But that means really business, not on the military front. I think that's something probably I think we should avoid in this part of the world, including Taiwan and South China Sea.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Ambassador, do you want to add anything to this point?
No, no, I think this stands for itself. Thank you very much. Are there any other questions out there now?
We have one more question, since just 4 hours ago, General Secretary Jens Stoltenberg, NATO Secretary General, wrote on Twitter, honored to receive the applications for Finland's and Sweden's membership in NATO. This is a good day at a critical time for our security. Your applications are an historic step. So as we know, Secretary General Stoltenberg met this morning with the Swedish and Finnish ambassador, who handed over their application for a NATO membership. And so the question to you, Dr. Henry Wang, is what is China's position regarding the NATO membership of these two countries, and how will China react towards the EU in face of a stronger NATO? Is this something which is important in your eyes from a Chinese perspective?
Yeah, no, I think, yeah, that's a question that has been frequently asked these few days. I just took an interview 2 days ago when Finland officially announced this join the NATO, and also the Finnish journalist just interviewed me on that. I was telling her that basically China doesn't want to see another Ukraine or any crisis like that. But also we understand what Finnish people is concerned about. And so the best way to really stabilize that is really, let's really resolve this Ukraine crisis as soon as possible. And also, I think that European, EU leadership, and of course, US and NATO should really, maybe in some kind of talks with Russian and really find a structural peace. I don't know if we can have a new Minsk moment, because that's really important. I think we cannot wipe up Russian. I mean, Russia is there; it's a neighbor you cannot move. And now we are talking 1,300 kilometers NATO's frontier now to the Russian, and it's only 100 some miles to the St. Petersburg. I mean, we don't want to make this world more tension, and that's where China doesn't want to see this tension added on. So I mean, by joining NATO of the Finland and Sweden doesn't really solve the problem. I mean, the roots of the problem is that the conflict between Russia and NATO and the West. And what if UN and of course EU, China, US can including Russia, can we really sit together and really let's sit at the Munich Security Conference and really talk about that and find a way to get out of that? I mean, I say that's the way. Otherwise, by more alliance, I don't think that Russia will go away. I mean, this could even create even bigger problem. So, but I understand the Finnish choice on that, because they felt threatened by this Ukraine war. I mean, it's totally understandable. But we don't want to see another Ukraine. That's the bottom line, I think.
Thank you very much. So we have one more question going out to you, Ambassador Ischinger, and it is a further question regarding possible sanctions towards China. And the question is, am I correct to understand what you were recently saying is that as long as China is not supporting Russia with material aspect, there will not be a sanction towards China, but we know US is doing anything they can to contain China. Will EU follow US in this direction? So far the question. What's your opinion on this?
Okay. First, if I may, let me add a word to the earlier question about Finland and Sweden. The historic dimension of this development, as pointed out by Secretary Stoltenberg, needs to be underlined. You see, and I hope that this is also understood, among analysts in China. Sweden has been a neutral country for the last 200 years. And it is a historic departure of huge dimensions for a country that has had this long-standing tradition for several hundred years to change course and now join the alliance. Why would they want to do that? Because there is a threat perception. And quite frankly, I would not agree that it is NATO that's causing, or NATO enlargement that's causing that is at the origin of this current tension and conflict with Russia. The last decision that NATO took to enlarge towards the east in the direction of Russia was actually taken in 2004. That's 18 years ago. And since 2004, the only NATO enlargement decisions that occurred had to do with countries like Croatia, Albania, maybe Montenegro. I cannot imagine that that is of any consequence to the security of the Russian Federation, because it is far away from any direct relationship or border with Russia. So I think the NATO argument does not really carry very far when Russia points out, when Russia tries to justify or explain the motivations behind the unprovoked and totally illegal aggression against a sovereign neighbor, in this case, Ukraine. So this is, of course, sent shockwaves through Europe. My own country, Germany, got rid of most of their classic military equipment over the last 20, 25 years. We declared to ourselves, after achieving unification in 1990, we declared to ourselves, great, we're now only surrounded by friends. Germany has 9 neighbors, all of whom we discovered are now our friends, because they're either in NATO or in the EU or in both, or they happen to be Switzerland, which is also a nice neighbor to have. So we didn't see any military threat anymore at all, and our army was diminished. We spent less and less on defense. So a shockwave has been created recently, if you wish, since 2014, but even more dramatically through the events of the last 2 months. Now, just very briefly to your sanctions question, again, I'm not a friend of sanctions in general, and I understand that the United States is extremely concerned about Chinese activities that might stand in the way of putting more and more and more pressure on Russia in this current war situation. I personally do not believe that there is at this point any argument that I have heard that would justify European Union sanctions against Chinese companies or individuals or whatever. So I hope that this Ukrainian conflict situation is not going to result in additional tensions between us and China. Again, let me repeat that. I would hope, I'm very happy to invite everybody to come to Munich next time and try to identify or define a path forward, ending the war, recreating trust and confidence building measures. But this requires the willingness by the Russian leadership to engage. And I think one of the few actors in the international arena who could actually influence the Russian leadership to consider re-engaging with the West is China. So I continue to hold out the hope that not only will we not need to slam sanctions against China, which I think would be totally counterproductive, but I would hope that China would, repeat myself, would climb down from the fence just a little bit and put a little bit of pressure or talk a little bit more seriously with their friends in Russia. And I think this would be to the advantage, to the benefit of Russia, would be to the benefit of Europe, it would be to the benefit of Ukraine, and would certainly be to the benefit of the reputation of China as a force of good and as a responsible global power that is not only trying to maximize its own interests or the pursuit of its own interests, but that has an ability to consider the global commons, the UN principles like conflict prevention and protecting the global commons. That's what global powers are supposed to do. So I remain an optimist, and we'll do everything to bring in as many Chinese leaders as we can to keep this discussion open and going forward, instead of taking steps that would only serve to antagonize everybody, like sanctions in the Chinese-European relationship. That's the last thing we need.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Ischinger. I have one last question going out to you, Dr. Wang, regarding trade and investment ties between Europe and China, and also regarding the development of green energy. And after that, I would like to close with a question to both of you regarding your vision on the future partnership between Germany and China, especially regarding political and economic ties. But first of all, the last question. So as Europe is trying to shift towards green energy and carbon taxing mechanism, how do you think this will impact European-Chinese trade? And how might concerns about climate change be integrated into the economic relationship between both regions? Thinking of or background of this question is also, how can China envision its trade and investment ties with Europe in a tense political atmosphere?
Yeah, thank you, Jennifer. This is really a fascinating question. I think this has enormous business opportunities between China and EU and Germany. For example, I just a few months ago, I visited the Daimler. They have a new R&D center in Beijing. We invest over 1 billion RMB. It is the first state-of-the-art R&D center for all the clean vehicles, clean energy vehicles production and research. I mean, China now is the largest clean automobile market, and also China has a wind power, the largest solar power producer, and then all those has a great participating of companies from Germany and from European countries. And then now we're having this energy crisis caused by Ukraine and Russian this conflict. That's really going to set us back on more other polluted fossil energies. So we have a vital interest, particularly a lot of the technology from European companies can be really beneficial, not only for the Chinese market, but also for German and EU market as well. So I think we have a vested interest working together. and China and the EU, particularly EU, and given the Paris Accord and the climate change leading position, we can really work together. And I think there's tremendous potential for those 5,000 German companies and hundreds of thousands of EU companies in China, and also vice versa.
Thank you very much. I think that already kind of included your vision for the future relationship, but maybe in one last sentence before we close this dialogue and this discussion, maybe you can give us an outlook on your personal vision for the relationship between China and Germany politically and also business-wise, in one sentence by you, Dr. Wang, and then afterwards by you, Ambassador Ischinger.
Yeah, thank you. No, I really want to take this opportunity with Ambassador Ischinger. I mean, you are a great promoter and great enhancer of the Munich Security Conference. Played a huge, enormous role. I've been there, witnessed this kind of impact. I really, now you are still on the board of the Munich Security Conference. What's your vision for the future Munich Security Conference? And I hope that China can participate more. Then we can really, now we really need more peace talks now than ever before. I mean, Munich security is going to be even more important in the future. So that will be my last comment. Question also for Ambassador Ischinger. Thank you.
Great. Well, let me put it this way. About 10 years ago, between 2009 and 2012, the Munich Security Conference was quite proud to be the platform, to be the venue of an important development, which was the Russian-American New START negotiations about intercontinental strategic ballistic warheads. And we were able to provide the climate for the reset button to be pushed in 2009 and for the exchange of the ratification documents between Russia and the United States 2 or 3 years later. That was a very positive moment. I am saddened by the fact that during the last conference, for which I personally took, full responsibility in terms of the speakers and the program and the priorities, which was the conference this year, that the Russian government representatives decided to stay away and not come, because 4 days later, they were going to invade their neighboring country. So this very last conference of mine for me was a sad moment, because it was a failure of our attempt to serve as a catalyst for peaceful, conflict resolution efforts. And I hope very much that going forward, we can return to the more positive role that we were able to play a decade ago, that we can help make sure that there will be not the outbreak of military conflicts in the Far East, because I think my fellow Germans need to understand, and this is why they need to be interested in what's going on in China and between China and her neighbors. If there is a conflict that broke out in far away regions of the world, we will be directly affected. We've been most directly affected by this Ukrainian conflict, and we're now learning that poor countries in Africa will be devastated by the fact that their grain deliveries from countries like Ukraine will be stopped, will be blocked, are not coming. There will be hunger. There will be all sorts of very serious challenges in terms of poverty and hunger and health going forward. Secondary consequences of this ongoing war in Ukraine. And that is why I hope very much that we can all work together. We as an informal, non-governmental platform, but that we can work with responsible government leaders, China, the United States, Europe, and hopefully at some point in the future again, certainly also with Russia, in order to make sure that we do the right thing and build confidence building measures, engage in arms control and conflict resolution programs, and help people understand each other better. That's the purpose. That's the original purpose of the entire Munich security idea. And I want to close with the point that without active participation by China, by the Chinese leadership, and by Chinese thinkers just like Henry, we could not perform this mission at all in the 21st century. So I'm delighted to have this link to China, and we want to build on it going forward. Thank you very much, Henry. Thank you so much, and thank you, Jennifer, for hosting us.
Thank you, Ambassador Ischinger. Thank you, Jennifer. Yeah.
Thank you very much to our distinguished panelists and speakers, Dr. Henry Wang from the Center for China and Globalization, and also thank you very much to Ambassador Wolfgang Ischinger, former chairman of the Munich Security Conference and also founder and honorary chairman of the Agora Strategy Group, for this lively discussion today, and also for all your encouraging ideas towards our political and also to our business leaders in both countries, Germany and China, as well as the European Union, for further dialogue and for finding solutions and ideas towards all our challenges we are facing today. Thank you very much, and I'm already looking very much forward to a next conversation. And thanks for taking your time. Also to all our participants, thank you very much for your for taking part in the discussion. Thank you very much for your questions. And to all of you, have a good day, have a nice week, and please stay safe and healthy.
Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you very much. Bye-bye, Henry.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ambassador.
See you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.